Hello and welcome to this episode of the Reset Podcast. I'm your host, Romeo. Each episode, I bring on a different business leader who's doing some game-changing work. And this episode, I am so delighted to chat with Julie Thompson, who's the EVP/CMO of OAAA. She has a phenomenal story, and you will get so many amazing insights from that. Take a listen. Hey, Julie.
Hi, Laura. Thank you for having me. What a treat.
Awesome. I'm so delighted to have you. It's like I love when my can connections always come back in person and then we get to sit down with you on the podcast. It's my favorite kind. So I'm delighted you're here.
It is fun. Well, there's no better place to meet than the south of France, I always say.
Really, it's always weird to tell people that.
It sounds so obnoxious, but it's so true. But I was floored by the activation you did there, the Sprite pop up. It was so cool, and it was just refreshing looking, literally. And I right away we just hit it off, and I knew we'd be fast friends. So thank you, and it's great to be in touch.
Oh, thank you so very much. Yeah, that was a labor of love, but we were so delighted that everybody loved it, and we were the right place at the right time because everybody was thirsty. It was very hot. I don't think people are realizing when they say, "Oh, it's 80 degrees in Cannes, so it's not that hot." No, it's 80 degrees, but the humidity is awesome. So
right.
that's why your clothes. That's what you change your clothes twice a day because you get stuck to them all day long.
Yeah, totally.
It's such a random spot. But I'm so delighted to have you on the podcast. And as you probably heard, the first question is always the same. Answer is always amazing. And I feel no different that yours will be as well. So, Julie, what was your first job?
Well, so my answer to that is, well, I started as like a child laborer, literally. I not only did we have to do a lot of chores around the house, my parents firmly believed in a very strict work ethic, and to earn spending money, I'm the youngest of five. We all had jobs outside of the house. At 10, I was helping an executive recruiter's office, like stuffing mailings in their office. I was like 10 years old. Then, and because I was very curious about, I'm just naturally a curious person, and I wanted to learn as much as I could about lots of different subjects. Like I always had like different hobbies that I'd get really into and then be bored with them a month later. So I worked a lot of strange and varied jobs, both manual labor and office stuff. So I worked at like a newspaper printing press, sorting stacks of newspapers. I worked in a cough drop factory, helping with packaging on cough medicine bottles. I worked house cleaning. I worked at a McDonald's. I worked as a junior copywriter at a publishing place. I worked as a dishwasher in England. I worked, just tons of weird random jobs, but it enabled me to be able to walk into any setting and be able to speak on so many weird topics. Ask me about construction equipment and, weird topics. But, I think having all those varied first jobs, it fed into this sense of wonder and curiosity, and also entrepreneurialism. By college, I had my own business. I had people working for me doing odd jobs and at people's houses in college. So it was sort of a journey, but and a very strange one in many ways. None of my friends worked like that, but it was fun, really fun.
It's crazy. In 300 plus episodes of this podcast, I've had several people come on the show and talk about their varied child labor experiences, but it's usually one. You were the first one to ever have multiple jobs with a small child on the age of 13. I'm like, right. Where was this? What country?
I know. It's so funny. And yeah, and then like I studied abroad in college, and we did a lot of cash in hand work, under the table, bartending, didn't know how to bartend, faked it, just weird jobs, restaurants. But I loved it all. I thought it was fascinating, and it helped me appreciate everything. I earned so much money in college that I didn't have to work the first year after college, and my parents were like, how do you have money? Like, they were worried I was doing something nefarious. Um, they're like, is she, dealing something? Like, and I was like traveling around, and they're like, how is this being funded?
Like, don't ask
Anyway.
any questions. Really, stop asking questions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Anyway.
Okay, wow. Okay, so
That,
after a lot of child labor, and having great entrepreneurial hustle in college, how and what shape did the journey to get you to have this conversation with me go? Like, where have you been? What have you been doing all this
yeah.
time?
So I started as an intern in a PR agency in Chicago, sort of by accident. I heard a tip in an elevator that they were hiring, and I went in and had never seen a press release before. I'd never done a writing test. They put me with a typewriter that with a broken erase key. Thank you. And I didn't know what I was doing, but I got the job and worked my way up, and then had really good mentors and just kept working up in PR and then advertising, worked for ad agencies, Fallon, Leo Burnett. And then 16 years ago, I started my own business in New York, which was all about industry outreach and helping advise media and tech companies on how to connect with Madison Avenue and with the agency world. So um, so that was great. And then right at the start of the pandemic, one of my former clients from IAB, the Interactive Advertising Bureau, which was like my digital graduate school, amazing time at the height of .com land and new media platforms becoming our best friends, Google, Microsoft, Yahoo, Tumblr, all those that time of those platforms. I got a call from one of my old clients from IAB at the start of the pandemic. She now heads up the Out of Home Advertising Association. And she said, we are in a pickle. She had just taken the job, and she's like, we are in the middle of a stay-at-home pandemic for the out-of-home ad industry. What do we do? Can you help us with a recovery plan? And I said, well, how long do you think this will last? And she's like, they're saying 3 months. Remember that? Like, we all thought it was going to be
fine.
Yeah, we thought it'd be 3 months. So I was like, well, that sounds really interesting. And I have always loved out of home. I've always loved outdoor advertising. And at Fallon and Leo Burnett, I mean, when I was at Burnett, we were the top billboard company in the world because of our work for Procter and Gamble and McDonald's and General Motors and Philip Morris and at Fallon, we were always doing crazy stunts, and I always thought it was the most creative medium. And so I started consulting for OAAA, March 2019, and then I decided to go in-house for out of home. I loved it so much. I've loved getting to know the industry. The companies are fascinating, and so that's how I came to be talking to you about your pop-up, your experiential out-of-home pop-up at Cannes.
It always leads back to things that Laura does for a living. So it's amazing.
Yeah, it was
That's
great.
incredible. So it's like, be at the right place at the right time, say yes, even if you don't know what you're doing, and figure it out.
Exactly. Yes. Believe that you can do it, Heck, if I can work on an assembly line at 14, I can really put up with a lot of people in advertising. I can talk to a lot of different types.
It does, but you're so right, and I think this is the thing that again, this is why I still love doing the podcast, is because again, if you were thinking about working in the assembly line at 14, to think about that, like you now go to Cannes every June like it's candy, like would
Yeah.
never even ponder that. So there's so many different ways into our industry, and how you get here has nothing to do with how you start.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're willing to do anything, I mean, I was willing to intern. Well, first they wanted me to be a receptionist at a lot of the agencies I interviewed after actually when I left my first PR firm, I was starting to interview at ad agencies, and they wanted me to be a receptionist. And I was like, no, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be pigeonholed as a receptionist. Would you be offering that to this young man I'm standing next to competing for the same job? No, you're so personable. I'm like, yes, and I have capabilities that should be advanced beyond the switchboard. So, um, I think having confidence too really helped, really helped. Maybe too much confidence at times.
Yeah, I always believe it's like, because if you're a dude, you can never have too much confidence.
Right.
So any confidence that a woman has is always somewhat tempered, as opposed to a man who literally will, you have qualifications of like, out of the 5 things, you have maybe 1.5, and he's like, I can be the best thing that you could ever see. A woman will have 4.95 of those qualities, like, you know what? I don't know if she can do this. I'm not fully qualified. And that's the stop.
Right. I mean, I do think you should be, well, I don't even like the word humble, frankly. I never have. I've been like, I don't have time. I think you should be a good person and not be a jerk. But I think that we are taught too many times to downplay ourselves and our successes. And I would love for women to get a little more arrogant, even, if you will. I mean, to be more confident.
Yeah, I am a firm believer of please talk your shit, because who else will?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
it's
And
like,
yeah, and believe in yourself as a premium product, as a premium brand. Cindy Gallup told me that right when I was starting my business. I was talking to her about 'cause she had started her consulting after BBH. She had started her consulting practice, and we were talking about pricing. And she's like, only you can price yourself at the right level. And if you believe in yourself as a premium brand, you should charge like a premium brand. And I was like, yes, ma'am. you know? And yeah, it's about belief in yourself and your product, your work product.
well, it's the belief, and it's the like, why would anyone? This is why you need to hire me. Period.
Right.
Full stop. Like,
Yeah.
and ask for what you want. And like, I feel like I have this conversation on a weekly basis with friends or colleagues in the industry, and I'm like, and they're like, well, Laura, why are you so confident? I'm like, because if I don't believe it, who else is gonna believe it?
Yeah.
And so if you have those moments where you have to hype yourself up in the mirror before you go out and say like, hello world, I'm that boss lady, then do it. But like, you've got to be able to put your best foot forward, and shoulders back, head held high, and say, yeah, I am that one. This is why you should rock with me. Because you've earned it. You've done the work. I think
Yeah.
sometimes folks feel like they haven't done enough because they may not have won the awards or the thing or that. And it's like, you never know who's watching, and you never know who's a fan of yours. Like, as we were talking previously, like, you literally never have any idea who's watching.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. It's true.
it's
And
not the hundreds of fans, it's not the thousands of fans, it's the hundreds of fans, the tens of fans.
yeah, I was in the airport yesterday in Boston, and I was thinking I would love, and we're hiring right now. We're hiring for a couple positions in marketing, and um, because I have this great job now of marketing the entire out-of-home ad industry and shouting from the rooftops about how great the medium is. And uh, we're hiring now, and I was thinking it would be so great if I could somehow not spy on someone, but see how someone behaves in an airport. How do they treat the person taking their bag? How do they treat the person when they're getting their sandwich for the plane or whatever it is? How do they act when they're boarding? I mean, because It's how people treat each other, which is so important too, and how and because you never know who's watching, just like you said.
Want to follow me to the airport next time, and I'll show you. It's like, because I'm on planes every few weeks, and it's interesting because, like,
And I bet you're gracious and wonderful to everyone.
yeah, because I don't want to miss my flight, and I don't want someone to lose my luggage. I mean, like, it's on the one hand, it's like being a good person and just being a relatively decent person, but also do it for purely selfish reasons. Do you want to actually get to your destination, and do you want your luggage to be there or in like Fargo, North Dakota? Okay, don't be a jerk.
Exactly.
And it's amazing to me how people don't see that, and like
Yeah.
the basic courtesies that you're just like, wow, really? Who raised you?
Yeah. It's shocking. Yes. Yes.
So obviously in your career, you've had probably lots of challenges and things that you're like, what in the world? Talk to me about a time when
Yeah.
you had a challenge and you're like, there's no way I'm figuring this out. And then you did.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, I mean, the most recent one with the pandemic and representing an industry that is dependent on people being outside and out in the world and traveling and going on trains and going on planes and taking taxis. I mean, it was and the industry had been growing so fast, and they had something just quarter after quarter of growth, and then all of a sudden the world stops. And so how do you help the all of those companies that own the billboards and own the screens and own the taxi tops? How do you help them still sell their advertising space during this weird time? And so I thought, well, we've got to do some research. We have to really study this and start benchmarking, because from all the like medical insider reports, this is not lasting 3 months. We'll be lucky if it's a year. And so I formed a partnership with actually John Gersma, my friend from Fallon originally. We worked at Fallon years ago. He's the CEO of Harris Poll now. And I had done some work with Stagwell, and so I knew Harris Poll really well. And we formed a partnership and started studying. And we wanted to get a taste of how consumers viewed advertising once they went out of the house, because they did have to go out of their houses. They had to go buy groceries. They had to go to the doctor's appointments, et cetera. But 7 in 10 people reported an increased appreciation and awareness of their surroundings during COVID and post, when things opened up again. So, and they found brands advertising was very comforting. And remember how great the all the PSAs were, and all of the a lot of the service that out of home does for people in public is it supplies emergency information from Amber Alerts and FBI, most wanted, to health and hygiene advice. Wash your hands, use sanitizer, wear a mask, thank you healthcare workers, thank you first responders. I mean, all of that public service advertising was heart-wrenching and heartbreaking and beautiful. Wall murals, hand-painted wall murals with homages to the nurses and the doctors. I mean, it was such a touching time. And when people went outside, they really noticed who was out there. And the storefronts might be going empty, but the screens and the boards stayed pretty populated, whether through public service or paid advertising. So it was fascinating to watch and fascinating to document. So so that was probably one of the biggest challenges for me from just a branding and awareness standpoint, and helping an industry continue to market itself as something people appreciate, and they really do. And post-pandemic, if we can call it that, even though there's some cases now, there is a new appreciation for out of home, and it's growing like mad. And it's also the most shareable medium, and it's become And again, I think it's the most creative medium. So it's there's going to be lots to come, but uh, influencers love out of home. The Kardashians love out of home. I can't believe I just said that, but it's true. But and it's growing, so you'll see more fun stuff.
Well, that's, I mean, it's interesting because like I feel like out of home and experiential are sort of like cousins.
Yes.
And so we play, well with each other. And I always, 'cause oftentimes when I talk about experiential, I'm like, we are a media buy. We're creating the destination where you can go and take a whole bunch of photos, create a bunch of earned content, and then use that for months and months and months
Yes.
post. So like when you're thinking about fun places to put us, out of home is actually a really great place for us to like play really well with each other because we both are seeing that like we're getting to the people when they're outside. I think people forget that like more and more people are finally going back outside. Like as you can see from all the Beyonce and Taylor Swift concerts, like,
Yes.
everyone wants to go back outside. And so how do you attract folks at this moment in a way that's fun and engaging? And I think it's so important for people to realize that after being stuck inside for a couple years, fun is the most important thing.
Yeah, it's true. And experiences and travel. I mean, travel is way up again, and it makes our business travel harder in some ways, but it's great. It's great to see. And the subways now are back. During at the height of the pandemic, like last, well, 2019 spring, when 200,000 riders were riding the subway in New York, it's now back up to 2 million a day versus 200,000 a day. So, I mean, it's so to see that kind of return and people want, yeah, it's all about experience and seeing something new. And we have a brand new member, Dive Billboards out of Canada. They actually do a ton with TikTok and next door. A lot of local work, but they just took a busload of influencers who were staying at the Standard Hotel. It was a program for L'Oreal for CeraVe moisturizer. These influencers had been handpicked by consumers. There was like a video contest, and they did these videos about their interactions with this moisturizer. Well, it became so popular and so many of these videos became viral that L'Oreal put all these influencers on a bus, brought them to Times Square, played their videos on the spectaculars, those giant screens and boards in Times Square. And these influencers would not get back on the bus. They spent 2.5 hours taking selfies with their videos up in the sky. And people were dying. And it was so cool though. And people loved it. So it's that kind of thing. It brings people together. The public square is back open, hopefully, for a long time. And it's just a fun. I think you're right. They're more than cousins. They're close siblings, experiential and out of home.
Yeah, and I think because we the same thing for both of us. Like we want to get to the people. We want to put the thing in your hand or as close to your hands as possible. And we want you to experience that brand in a way that's one-to-one versus it being thousands, because like, every one of those influencers was taking their own selfie. Like
that's right.
That was the thing. It's their matters to them.
Yeah, and then it's 1 to millions. So it's the social amplification of out of home and how out of home can be a transformative part and a key part of a campaign that then becomes amplified on social. It's a magic recipe. It's really cool to watch.
Yeah, we call it ours the infinite loop between us and social, where it's like you build the conversation online, you build the thing that people want to the destination, and then at that destination you get all that really great content, and then that goes back on social, and it keeps going and going and going. It's a beautiful way of explaining this to folks, because it's always funny, like, well, what is it you guys do? It's like, we're storytellers. And whether
Yep.
you're building awesome out of home, where like, or you're doing that kind of like funky, it might be real, it might be fake out of home, like the thing that they did with the Maybelline did with the tube, where they put the
Yep.
eyelashes on it and everyone thought it was real.
Yes.
Like, to the oversized Jacademus bags that were rolling through Paris, and that was brilliant CGI.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
there's so much of this out there right now. And I think, what do you say, how are you advising your clients in terms of like how to like tap into a lot of these moments where you can utilize technology in smart ways for out of home?
Yeah. Well, we always are reminding people that out of home is really the safest medium in many ways in terms of, you can't skip it, you can't block it. It's brand safe, it's fraud free. It doesn't have the digital fatigue everyone's facing, especially after spending so many hours on our computers. And that it, out of home has benefited from all the advances. Like it can do highly targeted, geolocation and weather triggered changes and updates in real time and instantaneously, on screens, where if it all of a sudden starts to rain, you all of a sudden start seeing ads for umbrellas and boots. And, if it's cold, there's Campbell's soup, all of a sudden, and you're on your mobile device and are you see it up on a screen on a board, and then you walk into a store and make a purchase. There's a huge connection between mobility and likelihood of people to buy after they've interacted with an out-of-home ad. It's something new that we're studying now, and it's kind of crazy. Like almost 90% of US adults have noticed an out-of-home ad in the last month, but then nearly 80% of them have engaged with the ad in the last 2 months. And so they use their smartphone to engage with the ad, and then they go in and make a purchase, or they go online. 43% of the actions become online purchases. So we're starting to really study that, because it's getting, you can deliver mass reach, but then it does become one-to-one through your phone. So we're encouraging advertisers and marketers and agency creatives to be creative with out of home and use all the different formats. People used to think of out of home just as billboards, but it's so much more than that. And there's so many cool new innovations that can make look at the anamorphic billboards, what Balenciaga did with Fortnite, and what Louis Vuitton did with their stores, with sculptures of Yayoi Kusama. That's my favorite campaign of all time, where they did a 60-foot statue of her popping out of the building. They had a robot.
Yeah, love those. It was so awesome.
They made a robot of her painting on the window, and people thought it was so real. And they did all this on-premise work, experiential, right? And then they also did paid media buys on giant screens all over the world: Tokyo, London, Paris. I really was impressed with, the fashion houses love out of home, and they are really doing some groundbreaking stuff.
Yeah, it's been so cool. As you know, we're doing one for a fashion brand next year, and it's kind of fascinating to me how like it's changed. Like I think oftentimes folks thought the fashion brands kind of lagged behind because they have their shows, they have their previews, they have their private junk shows, and that's basically it. Obviously they got their influencers and but like to see them stepping out and doing all kinds of weird and wacky things. I mean, Chanel had a diner during Fashion Week, which was wild and I mean, I have comments, but but it was fascinating. I think Dior did a yacht. I mean, and I think the thing that's kind of interesting about all of that is it's not just that they're doing it to try and be quote unquote accessible or to show that they can have fun or poke fun at themselves. we already know that they're aspirational, but I think that there is an understanding that yes, it's aspirational, but you still got to get closer to the people that who actually can be your customer. And in
Yes.
this very busy world, if I can build you something where, yeah, come check out our diner, and you'll see what this looks like. Again, you're not going to buy this Chanel bag today, but could you buy the wallet today? Yes.
Right. Right.
And I think that's the thing that's definitely changed in the land of luxury. Like, ultimately Vuitton does, and like, it's again like it's like getting you to buy the thing before you buy the real thing. Like, one day I'll buy that $5,000 Balenciaga bag, but right now I can buy a wallet.
Right.
I can, or I can buy a clutch.
Right.
Like, and by
Well,
creating that like more again one-to-one experience where this feels real to me versus it feels so pie in the sky, definitely seems to be the trend that is helping those brands come closer to the customers.
yeah, definitely. Definitely.
So,
Yeah. So
okay,
yeah.
go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, so just to get back to like the biggest brand challenge, what has been so cool and gratifying is how um, they out of home completed a full recovery, from ahead of schedule out of the pandemic. So last year it was named the fastest growing medium. This year it's going to continue its growth. Like there's just a lot of excitement around it, and so my main role is to help all of our member companies get out there more to the advertisers and marketers and the creatives who are going to make magical stuff. So it's really fun and interesting.
Awesome. Again, like I said, this is one of my favorite things. I love it so. So I'm so excited to talk to you about it. So,
But it's also the
obviously,
hardest to create. Like you literally, like when it works, and because creatives say it's the hardest medium to work in a way because you have such a short amount of time to make an impact. It has to be so simple and reductionist that you get a great message across in a clever way, and people really enjoy it. Like I love to see people like laughing and smiling when they look at the stuff you're creating, the stuff my world is creating. I mean, it's really cool.
yeah, I know. I think that is a thing where it's you oftentimes have one chance to get this right. Like it's gotta work. Like
Yeah.
that billboard's gotta come on. Like, and so if there are funky things happening to that billboard with the QR code, it's gotta work. I mean, speaking of which, I mean, I can't believe that like QR codes basically had the greatest comeback of all time.
I know. And Tim Armstrong, who now leads Flow Code, the circular ones, during the pandemic, he was actually, I think he was in China when the pandemic started, and and he may have been stuck there. I'm not sure. I don't have the full story, but he had sort of an epiphany because people were ordering their food from a food truck on the side of the road with their phones, and he was like, wow. And he just started Flow Code, and they just started. I don't know if it was chicken or the egg, if it was Tim and his round QR code, or if the QR code on menus started, in restaurants that started getting people more comfortable with them. But yeah, it's been this crazy uh, comeback, if you will, or even real launch almost.
Yeah, it feels like it's like if you didn't work in our industry beforehand, you probably didn't know what a QR code was because we all knew because it's like they never worked. People didn't scan them and but we always put them at the bottom of all of our the bottom right or on the bottom left of all of our signage for our events. And like, how many scans
Hmm.
did you get? 4.
Hmm.
But if you weren't in our industry, like, and then your first engagement with it, and I think it's also again a testament to how when technology is a utility, it sticks.
Yes.
And that's a thing that oftentimes folks don't realize is, well, especially if you're a tech company, the importance of understanding that when you become a utility, that is when it works. And if you can help make people's lives easier, it then just works.
Yeah, it really works. Yeah,
It really,
exactly.
really works. And like, I mean, I was at a cafe yesterday, and like it's a cute little cafe. And it's like, and the tables are really small, so it's like a little French-esque cafe, right? So these
Hmm.
tables are probably no bigger than like about 14 inches wide, but like 18 inches long, right? So super small. If you think
Hmm.
about how big menus usually are, that takes up
Oh,
so
yeah.
much space on the table. And so instead, they have a little, business card size QR code. You scan that, that's the menu, and you can like, order your croissant or your bagel, whatever, off of
Mhm.
that. And I thought about it and I'm like, oh, because so many places have gone back to menus. But I'm like, wait a minute. Yeah, they picked up on something. Why are they gonna have these big ugly menus on the
Mhm.
tables that really will just be a pain in the behind to take off the table, won't fit, versus having that little business card and a QR code? Like
Yeah.
it becomes this function of utility as a result of this.
Yeah, think of the paper they're saving and the printing and yeah, it's the sustainable way as well. So it's
It's
great.
so sustainable. It's and again, it's a thing where we literally all rolled our eyes at.
Totally.
It's like, oh my God, I hate this thing. And now it's also become a thing where it's like if I don't see it, so I'm like, why don't you have this QR code? This would have been a whole lot easier if it was a QR code. Like this should just be a QR code. I'm like, those words are coming out of my mouth, and I'm like, oh wow, I drank the Kool-Aid.
Apparently. Funny.
But it works.
It
And
works.
that's the kind of interesting thing about technology, that it becomes a utility, and then like it's like breathing for us. Again, we all have iPhones now.
Yeah.
So it is a testament to, again, utility. Yeah, mine. I won't want anything else.
Yeah.
Um, so thinking about all these incredible advances and all the amazing things you've been able to accomplish, all through all the ups and downs and twists and turns, what do you think you'd tell 18-year-old Julie?
I'd say stop working so hard. No, I'm kidding. I would say
Like,
no.
like, get out
I
of the
would
assembly line.
yeah.
So,
I would say that uh, I would say realize that the people you're meeting at 18 or generally more 21, 22, when people are getting out of school and working in their first jobs, like keep in mind, you may know these people the rest of your career. And the importance of being a great person and being a generous person, helping others succeed, helping, just behaving well in the marketplace, I suppose. I mean, even it's funny, like in Cannes, for example, I think this year was my 24th year going to the Cannes Lions Festival of Creativity. Um,
wow.
yeah, I started going when I was at Fallon and was told at the time, oh, that's a boondoggle. At the time, only like 5,000 people went, and now it's like almost 20,000, and it's the one-stop shopping for our industry, like you were saying earlier. I mean, it's like the mecca, and but I have to tell you, I run into the same shopkeepers, the same wait staff, the same like apartment reception check-in person. Um, it just reminds me like that's insane. Like now have relationships with these people. And in fact, I've had my scooter rental family who run the scooter shop visit me in New York. I've met others while visiting in New York. I mean, it's just so funny. So and so many of my friends, my first boss and I are still talk and they're still friends. It's so great. And the advertising and marketing and events and the world we are in, media. I mean, it's a very fun industry. And so I would say just keep in mind the people you're going to meet now, you may be in your life for the next 30 plus years, and just work on those relationships and value them because they really are beautiful and valuable.
It's so true. I mean, like, I feel like I want to stick that on a wall, and also like it almost like it needs to be a college course to some folks because
I
it's
know.
interesting. I oftentimes will hear it's like when we have our interns, and I'm like, and I like preach the gospel of like relationships, 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 concentric circles of friends who you will have throughout your life. And doesn't mean you have to be everyone's best friend, but if you were just chill and kind to people, like
Yeah.
like nothing really bothers you, like I guess it doesn't mean you're a pushover, and you're kind. Oh, hey, your shoes are untied. Like simple stuff. Like
Right. And like this is temporary. That's what I would say. Like when you're going through hard times. And I'll never forget Weber Barbecue Grills was an early client, and we had just created new letterhead for them. And we were doing a giant PR project. I think we were ordering something like 50,000 sheets of this paper. And it came and the zip code was wrong, which was one thing that we forgot to check. Because why would we check the client's address zip code? Why can't they check that? How do we know what their zip code
zip code
is?
is,
Well,
right?
it's up to us to know their zip code. So know the zip code, triple check, know that it's temporary when you're crying in your boss's office. And
And you're like, oh my God.
and know that you're going to end up being friends with that boss for the rest of your life. So anyway,
It's true.
that's
It
my
really is true. Like it's, listen, what can you control? Where you are in this moment, right this second. And if you're with
yeah.
new folks, make friends of those folks. It's like you all like you're in the trenches together. Like, one of my designers who I worked with in my very, very first advertising job is now a freelancer for me at our current job. And we worked together for
Oh,
like 15 years. When I had my agency, he worked for us on and off. And like when I came to this one, I like brought him in as a freelancer. And like someone was asking him, like, how long have you known Laura? And I was like, I knew Laura when she wasn't this version of Laura. Like, it's like, it's like she wasn't always like this. And I was like, shh, quiet. Everyone thinks I've been this boss lady forever. Keep it.
yeah, yeah. You had
uh,
to train to be a boss lady a
I
little.
literally like I went to boss lady school. Um, so
That's so awesome.
but it is
Uh,
a thing, and I think it's I think sometimes, especially for younger folks, it's like, well, how do I make friends? And it's like, again, you all work in the same place. You all talk the same, like, go buy the food. So like, go buy the water, go buy the food, but go buy coffee. Hey, cool sneakers. Like, how was your weekend? Like, you'd be
yeah,
surprised how much people just want to like say, hey, what's up? And that
yeah.
starts a conversation.
And it's
Um,
so important too in this time of distributed teams and work from home, and really building that sense of team and loyalty and trust. Like it's so important, and you're right, just don't forget any of that.
it's so true. So talking about all the stuff you've got to do, and you probably have 11,000 things going on at any given time. What does Julie do for Julie? So what do you do for your self-care?
Oh, um well, huh, good question. um Not enough, I'm sure, but I think um yeah, I mean, right now it's a really busy time for me because I'm on like a listening and learning tour with as many of our member companies as possible, and so I'm traveling a lot more. And I think just uh, for me, it's sometimes the simple things like rearranging my drawers or something, or my suitcase, or um, sort of kind of you know reorganizing the refrigerator. I don't know. I mean, just for me, it's like sometimes mindless tasks feel very uh, like nurturing in a way. Like, oh, I'm home for this night. I can actually, focus on, not sit at my computer, but do stuff around the house. That can sometimes be therapeutic. But I don't get enough massages or anything like that. But I have it on my list. I just heard that Ralph Lauren had at least one massage a week. and that his doctors have said it's why he's lived such a long, like, healthy life, that it's so good for you, for all your cells and all your muscles and your blood flow.
Wow.
And, I mean, we all know, and he also looks so good. He's looked so good his entire, as he's aged. And I'm thinking, massages, that's it. So that's my goal for 2024, massages every week. No, or as often as possible.
I don't do every week, but I do try and do it at least once a month. And I sort of call it Laura Day.
Oh, nice.
Where like I go to a kind of a nice luxury-esque salon spa. It's not too far from where I live.
Mm.
They know me on the first name basis. And like, which is crazy.
Wow.
Um,
That's an aspiration. That's aspirational. I love that.
and because it's again wild if you'd ever told me 3 years ago this would be a thing I do, but I realize I prioritize, but it's like it's like day of Laura luxury, so it's like a really nice spa, and I usually like either go to brunch with some friends afterwards, or I go take myself to brunch.
Wow,
But
that's
there
awesome.
is something to be said about that like picking a day, whether it's a Saturday or Sunday or Friday or Monday, and it's like it's your day to feel good for yourself.
Mhm.
And on the days that I've like shortchanged it or gone somewhere else where it's like not this nicer place, and it just kind of went because I just wanted to get a massage, it didn't hit as it hit different. And I realized that like why was I shortchanging myself? It's like if this is the one day of the month that I'm gonna like put myself first for real, I should at the very least not shortchange it. And so I
Yeah.
do find that actually works because it also helps your brain to think about it like, okay, I've got Laura Day coming. I can make it through these phone calls and not strangle anybody. So,
I love that, Laura Day.
yeah,
I
so
love
great Julie
that.
Day, whatever it might be. And it could
Yep.
be a day of mindless tasks for you, or it could
Yep.
be like something, a really awesome lunch,
Yeah.
or a beautiful bike ride or something, but it is like something you do for you, that feels different than your typical, I think helps with all because we have to take care of ourselves. Otherwise,
Yeah. Absolutely.
it won't
Yeah.
work.
Yeah. And just seeing friends too. I mean, seeing friends in a non-business setting, it energizes me a lot.
Oh my God,
And
yes. Like one of
friends
my
you haven't seen.
I
So
mean, yeah, when I saw ran into a friend of mine at this party that I went to, it was wildly random. I'm like, how are you here? She's like, how are you here? Like, we both knew this was the same person. And it was such a random thing. Like, what are you both? And it was just so nice to see them out of a work setting. I'm like, okay, this is going to be fun. It was like, I'm like, let's get drinks. So I completely agree with you. It's like, again, you have those moments to connect, and because we've all turned back into new versions of our robot selves post COVID.
Mhm.
Like get on planes, go do the thing, and now be on Teams calls. Like it's crazy
Yeah.
that like that wasn't a thing 3 years ago, but like now it's like Teams, Zoom, whatever else you have for your company. But like you
Yeah.
spend half your day on these like video conference things. And you're like, how did we ever work without doing this before? Oh.
I know. It's so wild, isn't it? Yep. Yeah, it's really crazy. Um,
It's
yeah,
opposite.
pre-FaceTime.
Because like also you like it's hard to multitask when you're on the phone and everyone can see what you're doing.
Right.
So
Yeah, that's true.
it's like darn. Um,
Yeah.
the last question for you. Do you have a give and or ask of the audience?
Do I have a what? I'm sorry.
A give or an ask of the audience. So that could be
Mm.
anything from like, hey, here's a great book I read, or here's a great piece of advice, or here's something I think you should do for yourself. Anything you want.
Hmm. I would love to give the audience the pleasure of a new book that's come out called The Choice Point. And it is a way to improve your performance. It's a way to make better decisions. It's a science-based methodology that my girlfriend Joanna Grover has published. She had taken a course at Harvard School of Coaching and learned about a new way to use imagery to imagine better outcomes. She went and met the scientists behind this thing. They ended up writing a book on it. She wanted to bring it to the masses, and Hachette ended up publishing it, and it came out in June, and it's gotten great reception. And it's a very practical, easy. You don't need a therapist. You don't need a gym. It is literally catching you at the point at which you're making a decision, the choice point. So when you open the refrigerator and you look for the greens rather than the chocolate, when you come into the office and you decide you're going to be a nice person that day, or you're going to be crabby, whatever, like taking a pause at that moment and then using your imagination and really beyond just visualization. And it's working with professional athletes, Olympic athletes, CEOs. This thing is being picked up by people and they're loving it. So it's an easy read, but with very practical applications. That's my long plug. I'm sorry.
It's an awesome plug. I'm going to pick this book up because I'm fascinated by this kind of stuff. So we'll put all the details in the show notes for folks to find this out. Like, I went to a retreat a couple of years ago, and there was a kind of coach who sort of did something similar to this. So I actually know a little bit about this. So I am down to read this because it does, like, the moment of choice and what you can do. So fascinating. See, look at how awesome that was. So fantastic. Wow. So Julie, we could keep on chatting for quite some time. You're such a delight. And like I said, I wonderfully love the serendipity of the universe I get to walk in, and meeting you in person back in Cannes, after having you on the podcast has been an absolute delight. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we'll put all the details in the show notes for you all to find out about the choice point and hear more about what Julie's up to with OAAA. And thanks for listening. That is our show.